At the start of my career, I was a motivated young executive striving to succeed in the banking industry. Fresh out of college, I quickly moved up the ranks, earning respect from my colleagues. My hard work paid off with a significant promotion and a generous bonus. Life seemed perfect with a promising career, supportive friends, and a beautiful fiancée named Georgia. We were planning our wedding, and everything seemed to be falling into place. However, my job demanded long hours, and I noticed subtle changes in Georgia's behavior. Once affectionate and attentive, she now seemed distant. I attributed it to pre-wedding stress, but the unease lingered. Despite my efforts to reconnect, the distance between us grew, making me question our relationship. One evening, while at a friend's house, I checked my phone connected to my apartment's security cameras after hearing strange noises. To my shock, I saw Georgia with my best man and another groomsman. These were the same friends who had just celebrated with me on a trip to the Gold Coast. We had spent the weekend enjoying the races, a casino, and lounging by the pool. On Sunday, we were asked to leave our hotel due to a noise complaint and found pills in our room. Unable to find new accommodations, we took a red-eye flight back to Sydney. My remaining friends insisted we continue the celebration at Tony's house. Despite feeling nauseous from all the drinking, I agreed out of appreciation for their effort. Georgia was at her bachelorette party in Sydney, and I wasn't surprised when my call went to voicemail. Georgia had moved in with me 2 months ago, after her lease ended. I had recently bought a 2-bedroom penthouse, making it practical for her to move in. Her parents, though strict Catholics, liked me and were happy about our upcoming wedding. At Tony's house, my friends soon fell asleep, and I headed to a bedroom for much-needed rest. Suddenly, I received a text from my downstairs neighbor complaining about noise. Confused, I replied to clarify the mistake, only to receive another message accusing me of causing a disturbance with Georgia. Shocked, I realized something was terribly wrong. Now I was confused. He seemed sure he had the right number. What was happening? Fortunately, I had a way to find out without moving. The penthouse, renovated by the previous tenant, had remote access cameras installed by her overprotective billionaire father. When I bought the apartment, the agent set up the system on my phone. I'd only used it a couple of times, but now it was crucial. I logged in, chose the living room camera, and saw beer bottles, wine glasses, a bong, and a bag of pills on the coffee table. No people, but clothing was scattered around. Hearing noise elsewhere, I switched to the bedroom camera. Moonlight revealed a tangle of bodies on my bed. I recognized the voices. It was my fiancée and friends. My heart sank as I realized the betrayal. Feeling a mix of rage and disbelief, I knew I needed a plan for revenge. Checking the recordings, I saw the hard drive held 24 hours of footage. The video wasn't clear due to poor lighting, but their conversations were incriminating. Georgia and the guys talked about the wedding, with Tom bragging about a plan to distract me while they had their fun. Georgia mentioned not using birth control, playing Russian roulette with our future. Disgusted, I disconnected from the system. The hard drive kept recording in a hidden closet. Unable to sleep, I went to the living room where Tony and Jeff were snoring. I resisted the urge to strike Tony, grabbed a beer, and leafed through an old newspaper. A headline caught my eye. Police warn against drinking booze. It mentioned a group targeting intoxicated women. An idea formed. Just then, my phone buzzed again. My neighbor had filed a noise complaint with the police. Perfect. I called the police, ready to set my plan in motion. "You've reached New South Wales Police. How can we help?" the dispatcher asked. "Oh my God! You need to get into my apartment. My fiancé might be in trouble," I said hysterically. "Calm down, sir. Can you give me some details?" the dispatcher replied. "How can I calm down? Call someone immediately," I demanded. "Why do you think this is happening, sir?" the dispatcher asked, still calm. "My neighbor complained about the noise, but I'm not there. I'm here. Please send someone over," I pleaded. "How do you know your neighbor complained?" she asked. "He messaged me, then said he filed a noise complaint. Please send someone. I'm begging you," I explained. "What address was the noise complaint filed at?" she inquired, making me feel like I was talking to a call center. I gave her my address. "Please wait a moment," she instructed. 30 seconds later, she returned. "I'm transferring you," she said. After another 30 seconds, a man's voice came on. "This is Staff Sergeant Potts from the Sex Crimes Unit." "Who is calling?" he asked. "Thank goodness. I'm Adam Spencer. Please send someone for my fiancé. Something terrible is happening." I pretended to cry. "We have a unit nearby. Is there any chance it's someone else? Or that she has someone there?" Sergeant Potts questioned. Whimpering didn't help, so I tried anger. "We're getting married in 3 weeks. If this delay hurts her, I'll sue you and the department. I'll go on TV and write to every newspaper using your name, I threatened. Calm down, sir. We'll investigate. What's your fiancée's name and what was she doing tonight? Sergeant Potts asked, trying to soothe me. Georgia? She went to a bachelorette party in King's Cross, I replied. Okay, we have a unit in the area and they'll stop by. Are you calling from your cell? We need the number to keep you informed, he explained. Yes, should I go there too? I asked, still frantic. No, stay put until we get back to you, he instructed, and then hung up. It didn't go as I hoped. I wanted them to burst in immediately. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor. Sorry, dude. Thought it was you. Police are on their way up. Weapons and helmets and everything. Hope George is okay. Praying for you both, the text read. Holy crap, they bought it. I logged back into the security system. Switching to the living room camera, I saw nothing yet. 3 minutes passed, and then the door slowly opened. 2 officers in bulletproof vests with pistols drawn entered, signaled, and 4 more followed. I switched to the bedroom camera, where chaos erupted. Police stormed in, yelling, Armed police, get down! Tom and Carl were quickly handcuffed. What the hell is this? Tom shouted. That'll be the last girl you see for a while, an officer roared. What? She sure as hell didn't mind, Carl added. They dragged the guys out. A policewoman wrapped a blanket around Georgia, calming her. It's okay, Georgia. You're safe now. The sergeant will call your fiancé to meet us at the hospital, she assured. At the hospital? Georgia asked, confused. Yes, we'll examine you. Would you like your mother there? The hospital has a great team for survivors, the policewoman offered. Georgia looked stunned. Survivors, she stammered. It's okay, honey. They can't hurt you now. Take your time. The paramedics will be here soon, the policewoman reassured her. This will be interesting. Will she lie or admit it was consensual and show her true colors? Everyone here knows she's engaged. I switched cameras to check on Tom and Carl. They sat in their underwear as a cop questioned them about the pills, but they stayed silent. I think you've crossed into dealer territory, risking at least 3 years in prison. Help us now, and we can all go to bed early. They stayed silent. All right, have it your way. Take them to the station, the cop ordered. The officers led the boys out. Another officer gestured for the woman to come out, and they spoke quietly. After a moment, the man pulled out his cell phone and called. My phone started ringing. Hello? I tried to sound as anxious as possible. Mr. Spencer, this is Staff Sergeant Potts, he said. What happened? Have you found Georgia? Is she okay? I bombarded him with questions. Calm down, Mr. Spencer. We found your fiancée. She'll be taken to the hospital soon, Sergeant Potts replied. Is she all right? I asked urgently. Yes, this is just a precaution. We'll be at St. Vincent's in about 10 minutes. Call me when you arrive and I'll give you more details, he informed me, then hung up before I could say more. I hailed a cab and left Tony's house, unsure how the police would handle the situation. Would they believe Georgia or Tom and Carl? I needed to stay alert to manage this. At the hospital, a constable met me and led me to a side room. Inside, a tall, thin man with a hooked nose was on the phone. The constable told him I was here. The man ended his call and approached me with an outstretched hand. Staff Sergeant Potts, he said, shaking my hand. Adam Spencer. Where is my fiancée? I asked. She's with the doctor. You'll see her soon, but I need a word first. He pointed to a chair and we sat down. 5 armed officers entered your apartment and detained 2 men. They're being questioned now, he began. Your fiancée, Georgia, I interrupted. Georgia is being examined. She'll be done soon. Meanwhile, I have some questions for you, he continued. Is that necessary? I asked, irritated. Yes, her welfare is our priority, he stated firmly. I want to see her, I muttered. And you will. But first, where were you tonight? He asked. Why does it matter? I retorted. If you were home, Georgia wouldn't be here, he pointed out. I was at a friend's house. We returned late from Brisbane, and one of my friends insisted I stay over, I explained. Where was that? He inquired. Renwick or a nearby suburb, I replied. When did your neighbor contact you about the noise? He continued. I'll check my phone. 11:45 p.m., I answered, looking at my phone. I want to show you some pictures. Tell me if you recognize these men, he said, showing me some photos. Is this standard procedure? I asked skeptically. It's just a hunch. These 2 look like office workers, not criminals, he noted. He showed me pictures, and I acted shocked and angry. Why do you have pictures of Tom and Carl? I demanded. Who are they? He asked. Tom is my best man. Carl is one of my groomsmen. Why were they in my apartment? I asked, bewildered. They were the two unclothed guys we found, he replied. Why weren't they at your party? He asked. They left Brisbane early, saying they had work, I answered. That's what they said. I slumped in my chair, trying to look dejected. A voice from behind interrupted. Excuse me, Mick, can I have a word? It was the policewoman from my apartment. Could you step outside, Mr. Spencer? She asked. I left my phone recording the conversation. They spoke quietly, then both left. I'll be right back with your fiancée, Sergeant Potts assured me. Sorry, Georgia, I muttered as I listened to the recording. We've done all the checks. I've written a statement, but she hasn't signed it, the policewoman said. How do you feel about that? Potts asked. It seems odd. She had an affair, but consent doesn't seem to be the issue. Her story sounds like a TV script. Maybe we caught her having one last fling before the wedding, she speculated. I agree. The guys don't fit the crime. Her boyfriend seems too shocked, Potts noted. How should we proceed? She asked. Let's read George's statement. Maybe you'll remember what I forgot to ask. Before she signs, remind her about perjury penalties, he advised. Okay, how far can I push her? She inquired. Just enough to scare her and get the truth, Potts instructed. Let's go see her, he said, standing up. They left the room. I stopped the tape, wondering what Georgia would do. It was time to set my revenge in motion. I dialed a contact. Eric Town speaking, Eric answered. Eric wrote for the business section and a gossip column called CBD. I met him at a fundraiser and we hit it off. Hey Eric, it's Adam, I greeted him. Adam, what's going on at this hour? He asked, surprised. I have a story for you. Is your column for tomorrow done? I asked. Just finished. It's been quiet. Got any hot gossip? He inquired. Is it too late to tell you? I asked. If you hurry, he replied. 2 young execs are in an interrogation room, I revealed. Seriously? Can I use names? He asked, intrigued. Only if you want a lawsuit, I warned. I'll put it in the Guess Who section, he decided. Eric's column had a Guess Who section for juicy, unnamed gossip. It was popular among city office workers. Tom and Carl, I said evenly. Your best man and groomsman? Who did they attack? Eric asked. My fiancée, or should I say ex-fiancée. I couldn't hide my bitterness. Oh, Eric paused. I'm not really surprised. What does that mean? I raised my voice, earning a stern look from a passing nurse. There were rumors about Georgia and her boss. Maybe she was offered as an incentive for clients, Eric said. Damn it. How was I so blind? I muttered. It's called love, Adam. Do you want me to run this story? He asked. Yes, burn them, I replied. Consider it done, he assured me. We hung up. A policewoman approached. I'm Constable Haven. Can we talk? Georgia will be here soon, and I want to help you both, she said. I smiled and let her counsel me, though it was tedious. Georgia arrived with Sergeant Potts. I acted like a concerned fiancé, comforting her while planning my next steps. 3 of my wedding party were in trouble, but there were still 2 more to go. The officers gave me their business cards, and we left. On the way home, Georgia thanked me, saying how much she loved me. At our apartment, I started cleaning up. Georgia wanted me in bed, but I needed to check with the doctor first. Come on, baby, hold me, Georgia said. I'll be there soon, just cleaning up. She eventually went to bed. I downloaded and watched the video from my hard drive. It was clear, no maltreatment had occurred. Georgia and the guys discussed pills and business deals. It was enough for possession with intent to distribute. I planned to send the footage to the police at noon, but decided to call now to show I wasn't hiding anything. I dialed Sergeant Potts, surprised when he answered. Hello, Staff Sergeant Potts. He sounded annoyed. I hoped I hadn't woken him. It's Adam Spencer. I met you at the hospital when I picked up my fiancée. Did I wake you? I asked. No, I work the night shift. I don't go to bed until 8. His mood was still sour. I don't want to take much of your time, but I paused for effect. There are 3 security cameras in my apartment connected to a hard drive. I snorted and cleared my throat. Why didn't you mention this earlier? Were you watching the footage? His interest piqued. With everything going on, I forgot. I saw the footage and I stopped, pretending to hold back tears. What did you see, Adam? Are you there? He pressed. I don't think it was a maltreatment. They came in laughing and kissing. I let out a strangled cry. And the pills? He asked. I saw them putting the pills on the coffee table, I admitted. I need that tape. 2 lawyers here are threatening lawsuits. Can you send it? He requested. I'll email it to you. Give me the address, I replied. He gave me the address and hung up. I sent all the footage from the 3 cameras. Then I tried to sleep but couldn't. Around 5, the phone rang. "Sorry to wake you." Sergeant Potts sounded much cheerier. "I was in bed but couldn't sleep," I said sharply. "Understandable. Can we meet for coffee at 8? There are some things I want to discuss," he asked. "Sure, I have no plans," I replied bitterly. "There's a coffee shop in Surrey Hills near the Oxford Tavern. Do you know it?" he inquired. "Yeah, I'll see you at 8, I confirmed. I tried to sleep but ended up lying awake. At 7 a.m., I showered. Georgia was still asleep, or pretending to be. I watched the morning news, trying to distract myself. A story caught my attention. Police conducted a pre-dawn raid in Bronte. 2 men involved in a pill trafficking ring were arrested. Neighbors described the occupant as a pleasant young man who worked at a bank. Police have not released details yet. Screw you, idiots. Sergeant Potts would be pleased. I got dressed to meet the sergeant, but remembered my conversation with the gossip columnist. I checked the online supplement of the CBI column. Under Guess Who Won't Sue, it read, "Which high-profile PR and girl about town is postponing her wedding after being caught with 2 newlyweds? Her former fiancé, a rising star in private banking, was not among them. Perfect. The city would be buzzing." I suddenly thought of George's parents. They deserved to hear the news firsthand. I called them immediately. Jack, George's father, answered. "Hey, Adam, how's the Buck weekend going?" Jack asked. "It ended early after a fight in Brisbane. Can I meet you and Janice this morning?" I requested. "What happened, Adam?" His voice trembled. "I don't want to talk about it over the phone, Jack. It's not related to this morning's paper." Jack, a city retiree, read the business section daily. "I'll explain everything in person. Can you come to town?" I asked. "Okay, we'll be there around 11. Where do you want to meet?" he asked. "That pastry shop by your old office. They still have the best treats," I suggested. "Okay, we'll see you there. Just one thing, Adam. Please don't make any rash decisions until you know everything," Jack pleaded. "I already know too much, Jack. I'm sorry." Real tears filled my eyes. After saying goodbye, I stepped outside. It was a beautiful sunny day in Sydney. Late fall is always the best. The sun isn't too harsh and the humidity is lower. I decided to walk to the meeting, arriving a bit late. Sergeant Potts was about to leave when I entered the cafe. "I thought bankers were punctual," he said. "I'm still on vacation," I replied grumpily as I sat down. He smiled. "Good news." The CCTV footage was very informative. It gave us enough to work with. We split them up, and when we asked about the pills, they both assumed the other had sold them. The waitress brought my orange juice and his warm milk. "Police work has changed," he said, sipping his milk. "We got Tony's name and searched his house, finding more. The narcotics division is thrilled. Tony is trying to cut a deal by giving up his supplier." "What happens to them now?" I asked. "They have a bail hearing tomorrow morning. Possibly Tony, too, if he gets a deal," he replied. "A public hearing?" I inquired. "Yes," he grinned. "Their lawyers want a private hearing, but the prosecutor wants it public. Seems you do, too." He unfolded the Morning Herald, showing the CBI column. "I don't know what you mean." I tried to look innocent. "Your surveillance system might have remote access and a time map. Should I get a warrant to see for myself?" he suggested. "Maybe by then, the hard drive will be corrupted," I responded. He laughed. "Keep your shirt on, Adam. I'm not after you. I want to know what you want to happen to Georgia," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She could be charged with perjury, but it might be dismissed as a first offense. Or we could forget it. Unless you want retribution, which seems likely." He waved the paper. "I'm not sure what you mean." I played dumb. "Call me after 6 tonight if you want me to press charges, or I'll bury it." He got up and left. I finished my juice and walked into the bright sunlight, heading toward the city. The next part of my revenge was to show up at work looking disheveled and depressed. This would fuel gossip and unsettle Tom and Carl. As I entered the bank lobby, I noticed guards elbowing each other and pointing at me. This continued as I walked to the elevators. I got on the first one and was joined by several others. The mailman rushed in as the doors were closing. "Adam, how was your weekend?" The secretary pretended to lose her balance and kicked the cart into the mailman's shins. "Ow, careful, miss." He exited on the next floor, still rubbing his shins. The others in the elevator were silent, staring at the floor. I rode to the top floor, aiming for the CEO's office. Only the receptionist remained, who had silenced the mailman. She put her hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry about what happened. If you need to talk, here's my number." She handed me a slip of paper and walked away. I threw the note in the trash, guessing she had a stack of them. I headed for the CEO's office. His secretary, a formidable woman, looked at me over her glasses. "Adam, darling, what are you doing here? You have 2 more days off." I'd never seen her so conciliatory. I was wondering if I could see Mr. Turnbull for a moment. I blushed under her sympathetic gaze. "He's taking a break between calls. I'll check if he can see you." She slid off her chair, knocked on the door, and peeked inside to ask. She returned with a smile. "Mr. Turnbull will be right with you. Have a seat." She climbed back into her chair. I sat down. She seemed to hesitate, then spoke. "I was abandoned at the altar. At least you found out in time." She quickly returned to her work, seemingly regretting her comment. Mr. Turnbull soon appeared and invited me in. He was a tall man with graying curly hair, known for his lunchtime jogs. He gestured for me to sit. "Adam, I wasn't expecting you. Given the circumstances, it's best we hear your story now," he said, seeming nervous, which was unlike him. "I came to ask for time off due to personal issues involving other employees in the PR firm. You should know what's happening," I began. "Yes, please explain," he urged. "I returned early from a retreat. At a friend's house, I got a text from my neighbor about noise in my apartment. Thinking it was a break-in, I called the police. They found pills and my fiancée with Tom and Carl." I paused to compose myself, using a handkerchief. Oh dear," muttered Mr. Turnbull, leaning forward. "Tom, Carl, and Tony are in custody," I continued. "Oh dear, this is bad for the firm. What did Georgia say?" he asked. "I haven't spoken to her since I talked to the police," I admitted. "Oh dear, this is a terrible situation. Those 2 won't be back here. Take as much time as you need. Call me on Monday, and we'll discuss further." He leaned back, relieved. As I left, I asked, "What about the PR firm?" He looked nervous again. "There will be an internal investigation since Tom and Carl managed the tender process. I'll speak with Jeremy, their CEO," he replied. His reaction made me suspicious. Remembering what Eric told me about George's role and Tom and Carl's comments, I realized Mr. Turnbull might be involved. I needed a bigger plan to get full revenge. I took a cab to the bakery to meet George's parents. I arrived early and ordered coffee. Checking my security system, I saw Georgia in the kitchen, texting frantically. Soon, she let someone in. It was Jeff. She tried to kiss him, but he dodged her. They moved to the living room, where Georgia aggressively pursued him while Jeff kept his distance. She eventually settled on a chaise lounge, and Jeff sat opposite. I couldn't hear their conversation due to the public setting. She then threw herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. I glanced around to ensure her parents hadn't arrived yet. When I looked back, the scene had subtly changed. At that moment, there was a knock on the window, and George's father waved, heading for the door. Jack made his way to the table alone. I stood up and shook his hand, then we both sat down. "Your wife isn't coming?" I asked. "No. After reading the CBD column, I thought it best to come alone. Janice has high blood pressure, so I left her at home," Jack said, motioning for coffee. "You're probably right. That slanderous column was correct, though. You should sue him, Jack." "Suing would cost a lot and likely be unsuccessful since it's true," Jack replied. The waitress brought coffee, and Jack waited for her to leave. "What do you mean it's true?" he asked. "Last night, the police entered my apartment after a noise complaint and found Tom and Carl with Georgia in our bed," I explained. "They must have forced her," Jack insisted. "At first, they thought so too, but it turns out they didn't," I said. "That's ridiculous. My daughter would never do that." Jack was losing his calm. "I'm sorry, Jack, but the pictures don't lie. The wedding is off," I stated firmly. "People fake pictures all the time." Jack, a seeing-is-believing type, was in denial. I didn't want to offend him, but also didn't want to be the bad guy. I pulled up the live security feed on my phone. "It doesn't mean anything. It's probably staged with an actress," he said, placing my phone face down. "This is a live feed. It's happening right now," I said. "What kind of sick freak are you? I'm glad Janice isn't here for your deranged fantasies." "When I tell Georgia, she won't come near you." Jack started to rise. "Sit down, Jack," I shouted, drawing attention. He sat, stunned. "Give me your phone." He reluctantly handed it over. I called Georgia's number. My phone screen showed her reaching for her phone. Jack slumped, looking old and frail. "I'm sorry, Jack, you should have known. The wedding is off. You and Janice don't deserve this, but I can't go through with it," I said. Jack nodded, wiping tears. "Have you told her yet?" "No. She was asleep when I left to meet the police," I replied. "Good God. She doesn't know you know, and she's with that guy again," Jack said, horrified. It's not the same guy. Let's get some fresh air, I suggested. We left the coffee shop and walked in the park, talking about everything but Georgia. Jack eventually wanted to go home, so we walked to the cab stand. When will you tell her? Jack asked. When she has a spare minute, I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. Jack turned away. Part of me still loves her, Jack. Part of me thinks this is a nightmare. But the rest of me wants to destroy her and the men who touched her, I confessed. Let me know before you do. I'll come to get her. A father can't stop loving his daughter, Jack said softly. Sure, Jack. I'll let you know. We shook hands awkwardly, and he got into a cab. I found a quiet spot in the park and checked the CCTV footage again. Georgia was in her robe, and Jeff was tying his shoes. Jeff, engaged to one of the richest women in Australia, was being foolish. Penny Rainhill, daughter of Jackie Rainhill, was part of a wealthy family. Despite her looks, she was a great girl and in love with Jeff. My father used to say, you can marry more in 5 minutes than you can earn in a lifetime. Jeff worked for Penny's family company, so his job would be in jeopardy if Penny saw the surveillance tapes. I had my revenge plan, except for my boss. But I had a plan for him too. All that was left was to get Georgia's cooperation, and I had something to ensure she met my needs. I was curious how Georgia would handle our situation. When I got home, she was gone, delaying the confrontation and giving me time to plan. Jeff's conversation with Georgia had revealed he was sent by Carl and Tom's lawyers to find out what she told the police. I considered a charge of witness tampering, but Penny would likely come up with a harsher punishment. Around 5 p.m., I was making dinner when Georgia and her bridesmaid Shelley walked in. They saw me in the kitchen and approached. Georgia opened her arms to hug me. Adam, honey, how are you? We were so worried, she said, sniffing as if holding back tears. I didn't respond to the hug. I've been talking to the police, my boss, and your father, I said. Georgia tensed but tried to stay composed. Shelley started explaining how they spiked my drinks at the bachelorette party, got me kicked out of the club, and how Tom and Carl took advantage of Georgia. She tried to hug me again, but I pulled away. Really? Is that what happened, Shelley? I said sarcastically. Yeah, just like Georgia said. It was just a little fun that got out of hand. Shelley was stunned by my words. Georgia looked panicked. You're on your own now, Shelley hissed, turning to leave. Georgia tried to stop her, but Shelley shoved her off. I knew you were a party girl, but I didn't realize you were such a promiscuous, she snapped before slamming the door. Georgia turned back to me sobbing. She mumbled apologies, claiming if I had stayed with her, it wouldn't have happened. Why is it always someone else's fault? Will you just shut up? I shouted. Do you really think I care about your excuses and lies? But I was drunk and upset this morning. It's only twice. I'll be good, please. Only twice? I mimicked Tom's voice. God, I missed your back so much. Georgia was shocked. Remember when you moved in, I told you about the security system and cameras? Yes, but you said you didn't use them, I said. I don't, but they still work. They confirmed you are a lying cheat, I retorted. She cried harder, leaning against the wall. She looked pathetic. I decided not to tell the sergeant about her perjury until I understood why she did it. I helped her to the kitchen table, grabbed 2 beers, and sat across from her. We're done, I said. She nodded. The police want to know if I want to charge you with perjury. I have until 6 p.m. to decide, so you have half an hour to answer my questions truthfully, and I'll tell them to forget about it. Please, Adam, don't, she pleaded. Answer my questions or wait for the police, I said firmly. She nodded, taking a sip of beer. Did you sleep with your boss? I asked. She nodded, wiping her tears. For how long? I continued. About 9 months, she said, sniffling. You were only there for 10. What the hell? I exclaimed. I was recruited for a new strike team. My boss, Jeremy, wasn't happy with my work. He said I needed to flaunt my strengths, she explained. Why did you put up with that? You're the miracle child, the youngest to get $1 million bonus. I was on my 3rd job in 2 years, trying to make a name for myself, I said, anger surging. Entertaining your boss might get you noticed, but not in a good way. I brought them 4 big accounts, she said defensively. I can't believe you're bragging about being a corporate strumpet. Now they'll discard you, and you'll have to start turning tricks for real, I shot back. Jeremy wanted backup, so I secretly recorded some meetings. I kept copies to cover myself, she revealed. Interesting. If I could get a copy of one with you and Mr. Turnbull, I might be able to take him down. Where are the copies? I asked, hoping they weren't at work. On my desk. At work, she admitted. Crap, I said, slamming the beer bottle down. What's the matter? Georgia looked startled. I need a copy with you and Mr. Turnbull, I said, walking to the window. I never, she began. I turned and gave her a hard stare. Well, she stammered. How did you figure it out? She asked. It's obvious. You use your assets to get new customers. Our bank is a new customer, I pointed out. If you want it so badly, I'll go to work and make a copy, Georgia shouted, standing abruptly and knocking over her chair. She grabbed her keys. You're not going through the front door, I called after her. She stopped and turned. What do you mean? She asked. Your boss will cover his tracks. You'll be met by a guard with a box of your stuff. They won't let you near the computer, I explained. Georgia bit her lip in doubt. Tossing her keys on the desk, she walked back and disappeared into the office. I peeked inside. Georgia was sitting in my chair, booting up my computer. I can remotely access my computer, Georgia announced triumphantly. I watched as she typed in the access code repeatedly. Her shoulders slumped as she realized she was locked out. Damn idiots. She slumped back, then sat up with renewed energy. There's a back door to Jeremy's computer. Yes, I'm in. I moved behind her chair. Copy everything, I said. You need leverage for a severance package. More importantly, I wanted to mess up my boss's life. I walked out, and about 20 minutes later, Georgia came out, grinning and holding a portable hard drive. Got all the fun stuff, she said. Did you get copies of his emails? I asked. Yeah, but I thought... I raised my hand. Stop. I've seen enough of you in action for a lifetime. I just want a backup in case the bank comes after me too. But I thought maybe we could try again. Sell everything, move abroad, start fresh, she pleaded. There's nothing fresh about you, Georgia. Seeing you with Tom and Carl was one thing, but today with Jeff? You need help. I'm not sticking around, I replied. She cried again. I took the hard drive and walked into the office. Georgia ran into the bedroom, slamming the door. The hard drive was better than I'd hoped. Jeremy and Mr. Turnbull were old friends and had conspired to defraud the bank. Turnbull wanted to boost his pension, so he had Jeremy inflate the PR contract tender. They split the difference 50-50ths. I called Sergeant Potts. He answered on the second ring. I thought you'd forgotten, Sergeant Potts said. I checked my watch. 6:05 p.m. No, just needed to be sure. So what's up? He asked, yawning. Don't confront her. She'll be uncomfortable without it. Do you know anyone in the fraud squad? I asked. Maybe, he answered cautiously. Why? I'll explain later, I replied, not wanting to reveal too much. Oh dear, he grinned. Who's the target this time? Wait and see. I hung up and called George's father to pick her up. I wanted to sleep in my own bed. Then I downloaded the session with Jeff and Georgia and sent it to Penny, his fiancée. It was tough to hit send, but it was necessary. Jack arrived about 40 minutes later. It took a while, but eventually Georgia came out. I gathered her clothes and they left. My phone rang. It was Eric from the paper. Did you like my column today? He asked enthusiastically. Yes, I replied flatly. Come on. We didn't chicken out, did we? He pressed. I wanted to get back at them, but I heard others too, I said, thinking of Jack and Janice. There's always collateral damage in war. Who do you want me to target next? Eric asked. I thought for a moment. Are you still there? Eric asked. Yeah, just thinking. 3 bankers caught with a joint isn't much, he said, frustrated. Not possession, importation, and delivery, I added. Now that's better. High-flying bankers, Eric laughed. Got anything else for me? He inquired. I'll let you know. I was done for the day. I turned off the phone, disconnected the landline, closed the blinds, and tried to sleep. At 9:30 the next morning, someone knocked on my door. It was Greg and the building caretaker, Adam. What's wrong with your phone? I've been trying to call you, Greg said. I turned them off to get some sleep. What's the matter? I asked, annoyed. DNA guys have been waiting for you downstairs for an hour. He stepped back, revealing a security guard with a box and a man in a suit holding a paper. Mr. Adam Spencer? Yes, I replied. I'm from the bank's legal department. Your contract has been terminated under Section 112B for damaging the bank's reputation. Here's a severance check for 2 weeks' pay, and James has your personal items. He handed me the check, and the guard placed a box on the floor. I was stunned. They were halfway to the elevator when I came to my senses. Wait, 3 weeks ago I signed a new contract guaranteeing me 9 months' salary plus 50% of my last bonus, I shouted. I don't know about that. If you want to contest it, see a lawyer, he replied, following the guard to the elevator. The building manager shrugged and followed them. Sorry, buddy. I picked up the box, which contained the contents of my desk and a few photos. I wasn't letting them get away with this. I called the lawyer who had reviewed my recent contract. Your new contract should be effective immediately. Have you been paid yet? He asked. No, the money is due in my account Thursday, I replied. That's why they're trying so hard. They want you to fight. How do you want to proceed? I can start a trial, and we could have a preliminary hearing by the end of the month. Is there any way I can talk to my boss before then? I have something that might change his mind. It's not illegal, is it? He asked. Not what I did, I replied. Is anything missing from your office box? He inquired. No, but I have a set of golf clubs in the storage room by the executive dining room, I explained. How much are they worth? He asked. About $20,000, I said. Nonsense. Are they gold-plated? He said, incredulous. Not quite, but they have gold inlays. A nice set of Honda clubs. Half a set costs about $50,000, I clarified. The lawyer whistled. I'll draft an order for access. Can you be ready by 1 p.m.? I don't know, I have other things to do, I said. Meet me out front with the order and I'll give you the golf clubs, I interrupted. Okay, see you there, he agreed. I ate breakfast and headed to the office for the afternoon confrontation. Mr. Turnbull was always in the executive dining room between 12:30 and 1:30 p.m., so the noise outside would get his attention. I checked the Herald website to see what Eric had written. He joked about high-flying bankers and mentioned the canceled engagement of a billion-dollar heiress, but didn't mention Penny and Jeff. I wondered where he got that from. 1 o'clock came quickly, and I waited on the plaza in front of the bank building. The lawyer was 5 minutes late and approached me, pulling out a document from his pocket and waving it like a trophy. I had to wait for the magistrate to finish his morning session to sign this, but here it is, he said. And what does it authorize me to do? I asked as we headed for the front door. I was hoping for general admission, but he played hardball and only allows you to go inside and get your golf clubs. Straight in and right out, he explained. I hope that's all I need. We were already at the front door. Inside, the guard who had earlier returned my office contents moved to stop me. Excuse me, sir. I've been asked to keep you out of the building, he said, standing in front of me and gesturing for the other 2 guards to help him. I held the legal document in front of his face. This is a court order authorizing me access to the building. Please move out of the way, I said firmly, trying to walk past, but he blocked my path anyway. I have to check this first. He took the order and spoke into a microphone attached to his shoulder. A couple of minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and the same little idiot who had talked to me this morning stepped out. He took the court order from the guard, put on his reading glasses, and quickly scanned it. Someone's had a busy morning, he said, looking up from the papers. This only authorizes you to go to the storeroom and back. No detours of any kind. He handed the order back to me, then turned to the guard. Escort him to the executive storage room, then come back here and throw his back outside. After that, he just walked back to the elevator. I moved toward the elevators on the left, holding the guard by the shoulder. In the storeroom, I grabbed my clubs, then stepped out into the hallway, determined to make a scene. Some idiot stole my putter. I dropped my clubs and headed down the hallway toward the executive dining room. You can't go in there, sir, said the guard, grabbing my arm but missing. I dashed into the dining room, but the guard was more nimble than I thought. He grabbed me just as I was in the doorway. I struggled to get free, but he was stronger than he looked. Hearing the noise, Mr. Turnbull appeared in the doorway. What the hell is that noise? He shouted, then realized who it was. What the hell is he doing here? Excuse me, sir. He has a court order, said the guard, lifting me off the floor by my collar. I stopped resisting as my target was right in front of me. Mr. Turnbull, it's good to see you too, I said sarcastically. I thought you might want to reconsider my severance package. No way. He pointed at the guard. Get that lowlife out of here now. I pulled a flash drive out of my pocket and tossed it to him. You better watch this when you get a chance, but not when your wife is around. Mr. Turnbull's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Call Jeremy and he'll tell you, I spat. What if he leaves here? The mention of Jeremy's name didn't faze him. Apparently, he figured the matter was settled. Putting the flash drive in his pocket, he walked back into the dining room. The guard began dragging me down the hallway. You have 24 hours. I think you have my cell phone number, I shouted toward the closing door. I grabbed the batons on my way out. The guard didn't let go of my arm until I was on the front yard. My parasite, I muttered under my breath. Excuse me, the guard said, but my lawyer was already waiting and returned my clubs to me. I was quite happy. If I got the deal I signed up for 3 weeks ago, I could buy another set. I was a little worried when I didn't hear anything before going to bed at 11:30. My phone beeped with a text message. Meet at Centennial Park Coffee Shop at 6:45 a.m. Gotcha. The next morning, I headed to the park at 6:30, hoping to get there first. Apparently, Mr. Turnbull had the same idea. As I walked on one side and he walked on the other, we huddled awkwardly together, keeping about 3 meters apart. "What do you want for the tape?" he asked angrily. "What I'm owed under the new contract," I answered just as angrily. "That contract doesn't start until Thursday," he retorted. "That's a disputed fact, and I don't have time to deal with our court system," I said firmly. "I never took you for a blackmailer," he roared, his face reddening. "I never took you for a creep who entertains his employees' fiancés," I replied. We stood there scowling at each other until Mr. Turnbull backed off. "Okay, but I need the photos and any copies you have," he conceded. "Easy. You'll get the photos when I have a signed document from the bank confirming my eligibility," I stated. "You'll get them today," he said, turning to leave. "One more thing. I want the little legal eagle you sent yesterday to bring the documents. This was going to be fun," I added. "Anything else?" he asked sarcastically. "No, that's all I want," I said, smiling. "Nah." He stepped back a little and then came back closer. "You know you'll never work in this town. No, make that this country. Never again, you little crap," he hissed. "That's a risk I'm willing to take," I replied calmly, watching him walk away. "Nice doing business with you," I said with a laugh as he walked away. I still had the emails between Turnbull and Jeremy and would turn them over to the fraud squad as soon as the money arrived in my bank account. The next few days went relatively smoothly for me. The next morning, a snippy little legal eagle from the bank showed up on my doorstep with some forms for me to sign. He left me a copy and told me the money would be paid on Thursday. I gave him an envelope with a flash drive and a small portable hard drive, and he left with his tail between his legs. Thursday morning, Jack and Doris came over and picked up the rest of Georgia's things. They had a problem with Georgia. She got drunk and went to her boss's house to cause a scene in front of his wife. The police were called, warned her to go home, but then picked her up for DUI. She tested the system and immediately lost her license. Tom, Carl, and Tony were released on bail, but the prosecutor was tough. He appeared on corporate morning TV. He didn't mention specifics to avoid jeopardizing the cases, but the conclusion was clear, especially when the hourly news showed the 3 guys leaving the courtroom and trying to hide their faces. It was like Jeff had vanished off the face of the earth. I talked to Eric, and he said there was a rumor that he'd been sent to some South American hole by Penny's mom. The company was exploring for minerals there, and the locals weren't happy about it. Thursday afternoon at 4:55 p.m., my bank account was $720,000 richer, and at 4:59 p.m., I was on the phone with Sergeant Potts. The next morning, 2 detectives from the fraud squad and a guy from the investment and securities division came to see me. I showed them the emails. They said it looked like a conspiracy to commit fraud. Then came the all-important question. How did you get these emails? I had to admit that they were not obtained legally. The detectives were getting annoyed, feeling they had wasted their time. "We know all these big guys are running scams, but they're surrounded by big legal fences. We can't drag them in here and make them tell their story." The securities guy was more relaxed. "Calm down, guys. We're treating these letters as pointers on where to look. It'll take some time, but there will be a paper trail. It's best to forget we've even seen this correspondence. I don't want to jeopardize any convictions." They left, and I was alone. Mr. Turnbull seemed to have started a rumor about me. I contacted competing banks with job offers, but the HR people wouldn't return my calls. I was walking down the street outside my building, wondering what to do when a black car pulled up to the curb next to me. The window rolled down, and in the back seat was Penny Rainhill. "You look as lost as I feel," she said seriously. Then a wide smile appeared on her face. "I've refueled the company jet and am waiting for you on the tarmac. Do you want to get some rest? Sit around feeling sorry for yourself or go on vacation?" I hesitated, rubbing my chin. "Give me 5 minutes and I'll pack a suitcase." "Screw it, just get in. You won't need a lot of clothes." "Where we're going and where are we going?" I asked, throwing caution to the wind and opening the car door. "To a family compound in Mauritius. It has its own beach, pool, golf course, and chef." "Let's go," I exclaimed as she tapped on the glass separating the front and back seats to signal the driver to go to the airport. 25 minutes later, we were seated in the Rainhill family's Gulfstream airplane and on our way. 3 weeks turned into 5 months. A fantastic vacation. Had I hooked up with Penny? Sure. and with the stewardess, the maid, and half a dozen local girls, Penny was just a wild girl. When she decided to have fun, it was an amazing sight. But that's another story. Why did I come back? It's simple. I wanted a front row seat at Mr. Turnbull's fraud and racketeering hearings. He walked in at the beginning of the hearing all relaxed, chatting with his team of lawyers. The bank supported him, so he had a lead and assistant barrister, 2 assistants, and a solicitor. By the end of the first day, his tie was loosened, and beads of sweat appeared on his face as he spoke anxiously to his solicitor. The case was not going well. The prosecution was thorough, presenting a long and complicated paper trail that linked Mr. Turnbull to Jeremy and the PR deal. At the end of the day, it emerged that Jeremy had turned himself in the day before. He had admitted wrongdoing and was going to plead guilty to a slightly lesser charge in exchange for testifying against his co-conspirators. Sensing the inevitable, the bank withdrew its support. On the second day, Mr. Turnbull came to the hearing in a depressed state with only a briefing lawyer. One of the bank's legal department representatives made a statement to the court that the bank was no longer providing legal assistance to Mr. Turnbull and intended to take civil action against him to recover some funds. With no serious faces left in the room, the prosecution wrapped up the case quickly. When it was the defense's turn, they showed their desperation by presenting a hard drive with photos of Mr. Turnbull, Jeremy, and Georgia. They claimed Jeremy had blackmailed him into the conspiracy after Georgia secretly taped him. The press rushed to the doors, smartphones at the ready to relay the juicy gossip. This put Georgia into the fray, and she was summoned to court. Jeremy had to go back to the dock, too. The whole sordid saga played out in front of the press, and for a week it was the main topic of newspapers and TV broadcasts. Mr. Turnbull's defense was at its best until the prosecutor called Tom and Carl to the stand. They explained that Mr. Turnbull's enthusiasm for his old high school friends predated the video. The defendants tried to discredit them because they were serving a 4-year prison sentence, but their words apparently resonated with the judge. He deemed the case worth pursuing and referred Mr. Turnbull to trial. After the circus of taking the case to trial, it turned out Mr. Turnbull lost his appetite for fighting, changed his plea to guilty, and got 2.5 years in prison. I wish I could say he ended up penniless and alone, but we all know those white-collar types are too smart for that. Shortly before his indictment, he must have gotten word that the securities people were sniffing around for something. He transferred most of his assets into his wife's name, and she started divorce proceedings. By the time of the trial, he was allegedly living in his son's garage and was declared bankrupt with no assets. No doubt there will be a reconciliation upon release, and he will be back on the streets. The head of the Department of Public Prosecutions must have enjoyed being the center of attention. So after Mr. Turnbull blanched and pleaded guilty, he took on Jeremy and Georgia. Jeremy only managed to settle on a charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, but the prosecutor added using a surveillance device to record private acts without consent, filming obscene acts, and using a telecommunications network to facilitate the offense. Extortion using threats. Some of these offenses were mere misdemeanors, but together they added up, and he ended up getting 3 years behind bars. Georgia received probation for recording without consent and filming obscene acts. However, her face was in the news more than once during the trial, and her reputation took a hit. Some of the dirt stuck to me. Even though I was only a supporting actor in the show, there was speculation at various times about my involvement in the case. Apparently, I was labeled as an unstable, betrayed man. In the financial sector, my job prospects never improved. So if no one gives you a job, you have to create your own. I started a venture capital business specifically for environmental projects. I haven't made a fortune, but I'm surviving and hopefully doing good things. Penny and I remained close, but she was a player, and I wasn't. I am still on the prowl, but I have trust issues that are getting in the way. I've just embarked on a wetland restoration project about 700 kilometers west of Sydney. In the real outback, 2 mining companies and a bank have invested money to bolster their corporate image. I'll be living in an old homestead that was once the main home for a 1,000-acre sheep station on the Darling River. I hope the clean air and big sky country will change my luck.